Can believe what they want to believe. There's no absolute truth. Anyone else? It's true as long as you believe it is. Anybody else? Truth is subjective, not objective. Excellent. Anybody else? Yeah. Right. Some people say that you have your truth, I have mine, you're okay, I'm okay. All right, well, let's see what the dictionary has to say about this. Oh, wrong one. Not there. Relativism, the belief that different things are true, right, etc., for different people or at different times. So the truth can change person to person. The truth can change from time to time. These are the sub-definitions, I guess you could say, in the dictionary. A theory that knowledge is relative to the limited nature of the mind and the conditions of knowing, and a view that ethical truths depend on the individuals and groups holding them. So again, truth changes from person to person, group to group. So you can basically boil it down. You guys actually, those of you that had an answer, had a good grasp of what relativism is. You can basically boil it down to what's true for me may not be true for you, or vice versa. What's true for you is not true for me, and you know what? That's okay. And this has become an attractive viewpoint, especially in our day and age, especially in high school, and especially when you get to college, because we have this idea that we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. We don't want to be accused of saying, of being told that I am being intolerant towards someone else. Now, Pope Benedict has some things to say about this. Oh, actually, let me talk about some examples first of all, in case you didn't get this. So you could say, all right, maybe I prefer going to the Catholic Church. I like going to Mass, but maybe Megan prefers to go to the mega church down the street. Well, that's based on opinion, right? Well, that's good for her. What's good for me? Decisions based on preference. Perhaps maybe eating healthy and exercising is something that's really great for my husband, Will. He likes to run. I hate running. So running's good for him. Running is not good for me, right? Again, based on preferences. Megan had a great example that she told me. She was talking about literature class. And basically, you can answer the questions however you want as long as you can back it up. And that answer is sufficient. You can just kind of, even if the meaning of whatever piece of literature you're talking about has nothing to do with what the author actually meant, if you can back it up and make something up for it, then that's an acceptable answer. But one way that, oh wait, hold on. I'm looking at my list still. Oh, this is a good one. Jesus might be your God, but I actually believe that Vishnu is God. So, that Jesus thing, that's great for you, but I'm going to go ahead and believe in Hinduism. I think Vishnu's the right God for that. And don't even try to chastise me about that. I will get you for being intolerant. Or you could look at 9/11 from the opposite side. Nobody was relativistic on September 11, 2001. What those terrorists did was inherently wrong, right? Exactly. Now, St. Paul has this lovely definition that Pope Benedict likes to use. They called it, basically talked about it as being tossed about to and from and carried about with every wind of doctrine. That's from Ephesians 4, verse 14. And St. Paul calls people who are tossed about, like being in the wind, talks about them as children in the faith. Now, he's not talking about having childlike faith, which we hear about a lot. No, this is being childish, and there's a big difference. Pope Benedict says, every day new sects are born, and we realize what St. Paul says on the deception of men. on the cunning that tends to lead into error. To have clear faith, according to the creed of the church, is often labeled as fundamentalism, while relativism, that is, allowing oneself to be carried about with every wind of doctrine, seems to be the only attitude that is fashionable. A dictatorship of relativism is being constituted that recognizes nothing as absolute and which leaves only the I, meaning myself, and its whims as the ultimate measure. I took a lot of Meghan's stuff. Here, you can take this one.
You did a beautiful job. So, what Pope Benedict has referred to relativism as the greatest dictatorship of our time. So you guys know what dictators are, right? Hitler, Saddam Hussein, those are dictators, right? Typically don't like them. So he said we're moving towards a dictatorship of relativism, which does not recognize anything as for certain, and which has as its highest goal one's own ego and one's own desires. So the goal of our dictatorship is basically whatever I want. I'm my own dictator. You're your own dictator, and we're just going to dictate ourselves. So why does he refer to this as the greatest problem of our time and a dictatorship? Because those are pretty strong words. Why is it such a problem? Why is relativism such a problem? First of all, it makes no sense. It's the first problem. You guys saw the skit here. The balloon is red. We know it's red. Like, the skit is an extreme example of relativism because, like, it makes it very clear that this is just it's nonsensical, right? If truth in being is in accord with fact or reality, how can the truth about something change based on each person? If it's true for me, it's true for you. Well, then there's nothing left to say that anything is true. So, in other words, how can something that's actually, like, if it's actually true for me, then it is inherently not true for you, and vice versa. So it's what we call a self-refuting argument. Second big problem is that relativism and this belief in relativism opens up a whole can of worms in our culture today, and we see it everywhere, especially with moral choices like abortion, euthanasia, redefining marriage, cohabitation, etc. All of these things are based on a personal opinion or the opinion of whatever, whoever kind of has the media airwaves at the time. That's what the truth is based on, a personal opinion of what is good in a relativistic world, as opposed to what may actually be the good. Third problem is that when you actually take on a relativistic mindset, like, well, balloon is red. No, it's not. It's green. Oh, okay. That's good for you. That mindset, you eventually have to conclude that there's no truth at all, which I think you also saw in the skit. Life is either completely meaningless, or if you can't come up with something meaningful, then it's just your own opinion, and that, therefore it can't be true. So when it comes down to it, we have to refute relativism because it denies that there is an absolute truth. We as Christians know that absolute truth exists, because that absolute truth is God, period. Under relativism, we get to make up who God is instead of being made up by God. And so to affirm relativism is to ultimately deny God. So we want to talk a little bit about where relativism comes from, because I think we see it everywhere in our culture, and in order to affront something, we have to kind of get to the root of it. And so what we see today as relativism is born as a reaction to moralism, this law-centric moralism. So these are kind of two extremes. Does anyone want to take a guess as to what moralism is, what we mean when we say that? Euler? Moralism? That's okay. Another way of thinking moralism is to think of the Pharisees. In the Gospels, we hear Jesus rebuking the Pharisees, these people who are more attached to the law than anything else. They're more concerned with the teachings of Christ, rather than Christ the man, Christ the Word made flesh. And so here are some examples of moralism, kind of countering these examples of relativism. hating rap music because sometimes there's swear words. So you put a blanket hatred on rap music. Judging people for being gay. Another example, a priest friend of mine went on a priest's retreat, and the Monsignor leading the retreat, like an idiot, lights up a cigarette inside and starts smoking while he's preaching to these priests. And they kicked him out of the retreat. However, the Monsignor was preaching good stuff. He was like really on it and like really provoking these other priests and making them better priests, and they kicked him out of the retreat purely on the basic because he was smoking on the campus. And then Annie had another good example.
Yeah, I want to jump in here with one that I heard personally. I was in a small group one time, helping to lead a small group, and the discussion kind of turned its way into a discussion about abortion. And some of the girls who were in my small group said, I bet women who have an abortion, they probably wouldn't even love their babies if they actually had them. That is looking at the law and not looking at the person, and not looking at what led a woman to make that awful choice. Now, that's not taking into account, of course, we know that it's sinful to have an abortion. Obviously, it's a mortal sin. But to say that about somebody without knowing anything about them, that's moralism.
So, we see that this is a problem. This moralistic attitude is a problem, and the reason it's a problem is because it's not true Christianity. It's a bastardization of Christianity, okay? So what is the true origin of morality? I like to look at John chapter 8, verse 1 to 11, which is the adulterous woman encountering Jesus for the first time, where we think of the Passion of the Christ, where he's drawing a line in the sand. That's the scene in the Gospels, where he who is without sin, throw the first stone. Or you look towards the end of the Gospels, Peter, do you love me? Peter denies Christ 3 times in the worst, most horrendous moments of his end of his life. And on the beach, on the Sea of Galilee, the next, after he was risen, instead of calling Peter out, hey, you denied me 3 times, what's up? He just asked him, Peter, do you love me? So the origin of morality is not, did you deny me? Why did you deny me? The origin of morality is, Peter, do you love me? And so we see in the Gospels that Jesus recognized sin. He didn't condone, he never condoned sin, but his attitude was one of forgiveness rather than charity. And so Monsignor Luigi Desani, who I love dearly, says, the passion to change one's life, not the justification of our errors, lives within the experience of Christ in our unity. And it is the opposite of moralism. Not a law to which we conform, but a love to which we adhere. A presence to follow more and more with ourselves, a fact within which we can truly sink. The serene, well-balanced, and at the same time passionate desire to change oneself thus becomes a daily reality without any shadow of pietism or moralism. It becomes a love for the truth of one's being, a desire as wonderful and uncomfortable as thirst. So you see here that it's a love for the truth of one's being. So we see moralism is not the correct response to relativism, and relativism is not the correct response to moralism. So how do we find truth? Or is truth even important? And so we begin to reconcile these two positions by cultivating a love for the truth of one's being. So Annie's going to go into more what that actually means.
Look, the thing is that truth is a person, right? Truth is a person. And it's really hard to be relativistic about a person. Now, I know we just saw DJ say, what balloon? There is no balloon, when he's staring right at a balloon. But really and truly, can you really deny a person who walked this earth and say that that person didn't exist? No. Now, Jesus either was what he said he was Lord, God, the Son of God, or perhaps he was an opportunistic liar, or perhaps he was a lunatic alongside all of the other thousands, billions of people who were eyewitnesses, who were martyred for their faith. So, truth is a person. What is true for me is true for you. That is truth, right? That is truth. So what was true 2,000 years ago is still true today. That is the only way that we are able to have the exact same experience as the disciples 2,000 years ago. We were made for truth. We were made for it. Truth, of course, without love, though, is meaningless. Truth without love is meaningless. But on the other side of that, love without truth, of course, is also meaningless. And throughout Scripture, we hear this proclamation of the truth being intertwined with God's very identity. God is truth. And we are called to live that truth that is Jesus Christ. We're called to stand up for the truth. We are not to apologize for the truth, but we are to proclaim that truth with love and with mercy. That is how we can reconcile these two things. Now, Megan and Brad and I have this lovely little mantra: when in doubt, just read Pope Benedict word for word. I don't know if you've noticed, Brad always quotes Pope Benedict. You don't hear me talk as much, but I always quote Pope Benedict. Megan loves Pope Benedict. So we've got kind of a long quote from Pope Benedict, but it was funny because it's like, you can say all of these things, and then you're like, you look up Pope Benedict, what he said about it, and you're like, I should just read this word for word, and that's it. Like, that's done. That's all we need to do. So you can hear our talk summed up in this short, well, not really short, but kind of short summary. He says, have you noticed how often the call for freedom is made without ever referring to the truth of the human person? Some today argue that respect for freedom of the individual makes it wrong to seek truth, including the truth about what is good. In some circles, to speak of truth is seen as controversial or divisive, and consequently best kept in the private sphere, kept to yourself. And in truth's place, or better said, its absence, an idea has spread which, in giving to everything indiscriminately, claims to assure freedom and to liberate conscience. We call this relativism. But what purpose has a freedom which, in disregarding truth, pursues what is false or wrong? How many young people have been offered a hand which, in the name of freedom or experience, has led them to addiction, to moral or intellectual confusion, to hurt, to a loss of self-respect, even to despair, and so tragically and sadly, to the taking of their own life? Dear friends, truth is not an imposition, nor is it simply a set of rules. It is a discovery of the one who never fails us, the one whom we can always trust. In seeking truth, we come to live by belief, because ultimately, truth is a person, Jesus Christ. That is why authentic freedom is not an opting out, it is an opting in, nothing less than letting go of self and allowing oneself to be drawn into Christ's very being for others. He gave that talk to a group of young people when he was here in the United States. Sums it up pretty nicely. Megan has another Benedict quote. So we're going to leave you with one final words from B16, but it's a little shorter and easier to remember. But you may have heard it before. You've probably heard it before. Being Christian is not the result of an ethical choice or a lofty idea, but the encounter with an event, a person, which gives life a new horizon and a decisive direction. Pope Benedict XVI and Deus Caritas Est. So I don't will myself to be Christian.
I encounter someone, and that is how I am Christian.